Hi all, welcome to PhD Expertise. It's Rajiv and Jung here today, and our special guest is Jean-Guillaume Durand. So he is a good friend of our show, and also he has a PhD. He graduated from Georgia Tech in 2017. He was a co-founder of a startup in France during his PhD, Tallyos. And currently he's working as an applied scientist at Amazon in Amazon Prime Air in their drone delivery program. So we want to welcome John to the program.
Hey guys, yeah, thanks a lot for having me. Really fun to be here.
Awesome. So we're going to kick it off, John, with actually a little bit about your background. So we know that you were an undergraduate student at Super Aero, which is one of the top institutes in France, right? And as a student coming to the U.S., could you just talk a little bit about the process that you had to undertake to be able to make the decision to come to Georgia Tech, and or what factors went into that, and why did you end up going to Georgia Tech for your PhD?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question, Rajiv. One thing that is important about Super Aero is that I also chose Super Aero because it had a good exposure to international schools, for instance. And so what happens over there is that in the third year, so you're supposed to do 3 years, but in the third year, you have the opportunity to go on a dual degree program, actually. And the school has a few agreements with international schools, including Georgia Tech, to sort of get students into those programs. So Super Aero gets a few students from Georgia Tech, let's say, and then they send over a few students to Georgia Tech as well from Super Aero. So this is sort of how I chose Super Aero in the first place. And then naturally, once I was in the program, they sort of so they have a ranking of the students, and based on how you rank, you can attend different schools in the dual degree programs. So this is how I naturally came to choose Georgia Tech for my third year as in part of this dual degree program. We also have agreements with other schools a little bit in the US. I think we have a little bit with MIT or Michigan, for instance. So this sort of helped the process for me a little bit. And since this is part of an agreement, we also have the administrative staff in the school help us with everything that's, the examinations required to go abroad, like the GRE and the TOEFL for English, etc. So they sort of help you prepare for that and take care of a lot of the visa paperwork. But knowing that, you can also apply on your own on the side if you want. So that really helped actually a lot for us to prepare. I think it was 3 or 4 of us at the time to try to attend Georgia Tech. And that really helped sort of prepare a nice sort of application for Georgia Tech.
Okay, no, that makes sense. And it seems like it's a common sort of element of a lot of people who come from different countries studying in the United States is that they'll depend, or they'll work with other people in their cohort, for example, to be able to choose a university. And it sounds like you did the same thing. So that's great. And what's really interesting is that you came to Georgia Tech, you did your master's first, right? And then you decided to stick around for your PhD. What was it about Georgia Tech that that made you want to stick around?
Yeah. So the first thing, so I came as an aerospace engineer, right, which was my specialization back in the day, with a little bit more in robotics as well. And what I found out is that after having the master's, it was not especially easy to find a job in the US as an aerospace engineer, like only with the master's, let's say, unless you had maybe a green card or you were a national. And that's because a lot of the aerospace projects are related to defense, right? And so as such, you have to be a national pretty much. So seeing that was a little bit harder on this sense, I decided to specialize a little bit more in the robotics, take a little bit of a horizontal turn to sort of try to diversify my profile a little bit and make it easier maybe to find a job. And so I pursued a PhD, still in aerospace engineering, but with a clear focus on robotics, actually.
Okay.
And so in general, what helped this decision was really the advisor that I had in the time for my master thesis really encouraged us to pursue the PhD, and so that really helped in the decision-making process.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, what type of I know it was Dr. Mavris, right? Dimitri Mavris. He's very famous, well known in the community, right? What was it? What type of projects were you working on in his lab, and how did that? How did you make your own choice, or did you go towards a particular route? Because I know you had more of a coding type of programming type of project, right?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. As I studied in Georgia Tech, actually, I had a different advisor, which was Frank Delart, and working on high-speed autonomous driving at the time. And then for different funding issues, and happened to switch to Dr. Mavris. And then I think what's really important is that it's always a conversation between you and your advisor, right? So you can gear your research towards what you want to work on, and then your advisor is going to try to gear it towards where he has funding, right? So it's always like a nice balance that you have to find, and this is why the choice of your advisor is really important, actually. In terms of projects, once I was over there, I worked on a few different things, like collaborations with Airbus back in Europe. Student competitions are actually also important in terms of projects that you can take on during a PhD. And then I would say the main project as I was working towards my thesis was the design of drones using 3D printed parts, and still in that robotics framework where you had to actually program the drone. So as you mentioned, like a more, let's say, computer science profile. So yeah, this is how you sort of try to gear your project towards what you really want to do.
So Jean, let's just switch gear a little bit and learn that while you were at Georgia Tech, you founded a startup called Tallyos. And what was the process like, and what was the goal of that startup?
Yeah, good question. So maybe the context, the goal of the startup was to, one of our co-founders actually identified a pretty dire need in the mobile workers industry, where there was a need to sort of get rid of paperwork and administrative paperwork for generating pay stubs for employees. This was done very manually. And of course, it was very error prone. So we sort of decided to take a take on it to automate this process as much as possible. And so that was the goal of the startup, like using small devices where you can actually record work time and work locations, for instance, which is essential for mobile workers. They have to prove that they've been on site and carrying out their tasks. And so you can imagine maybe for construction workers or security workers, cleaning crews, etc., which are never in the same worksite location, right? So that was the goal of the startup, to sort of try to automate this as much as possible and make it seamless in order to generate pay stubs and get rid of all this error-prone paperwork. The process itself, so the startup was funded in France, and for that we got a lot of help from local governments that actually provide you with grants and sort of loans with no interest as well, which is really interesting for the first few rounds of funding. And they also help you with startup accelerators that don't charge you anything, but you're able to have, maybe an office and then consulting as well in terms of finance and legal stuff, which is really interesting. So I think really working with whatever help you can get is really interesting there. And I know Georgia Tech also has a few services that you can use, for instance. So don't hesitate to reach out to your score and see what they can do for you, and they can definitely help in that process. Yeah.
Okay, I see. Another question: while you were at Georgia Tech, I learned you had a few internship at Amazon, and then also, obviously, you decided to accept their offer and return to the program. Can you talk about what's special about that program? What made you decide to want to return?
Yeah, very good question. So I think what struck me at first, so as a first intern with the team, it was very few people working on the project, a sort of small scale project and prototyping, and try to see if it was even feasible, right, to deliver packages to people using drones. And then what really struck me was, first of all, the team of experts that were in the team. Sort of world-class people known for their publications. So that was really inspiring to work along such people. Then the type of problematics that were trying to be addressed were very unique and never done before, which I think was also very challenging and very interesting as a researcher point of view, right? So I think that was really stimulating there. And then finally, as the project grew and grew, I think I was really struck by the ambition, the like really great ambition of the project to try to make it large scale for the whole Amazon. So I think those are three factors that really motivated me to stay there and keep returning for full-time positions.
Sure. And Jean, can you talk a little bit about the skills that someone would need to be able to pursue an opportunity like that? What kind of skills are required for the job that you have right now?
Yeah, good question. So of course, all the domain knowledge is very important. So in my case, it would be, for instance, a mix of computer vision, machine learning, for instance. So those skills are important, and this is what you would mostly learn in theory in school. But then what I realized as well is that the applicability skills are very important as well. And so maybe we'll come back to that later with another question, but you need to make sure that you're up to date with the tools that are used in the industry. So one very concrete example for me was in my thesis, even though I had a very relevant background in computer science, most of the research done in aerospace engineering was done using MATLAB, for instance. And I think this is widespread practice in academia as well. A lot of people use MATLAB. And then when you switch to the industry, a lot of people actually use Python. So even though you can sort of find the same toolings, etc., which are more open source than in MATLAB, you still have to make that switch. And I think it's really important to keep track of that to see if maybe you can do your thesis in Python, maybe, or use the tools that are used in the industry, so that whatever you work on is sort of directly applicable without that much of a learning curve once you switch to the industry. So that this is definitely something I can recommend for people trying to apply for jobs, switching from a PhD. I think that is not only applicable to your hard skills like coding or simulations, etc., but also in terms of the topic that you choose. You want to work on a topic that can directly be applicable and very relevant to the industry. You just don't want to have some sort of a token PhD degree and end up in a position where the team just needed somebody that had maybe just a PhD and didn't really care in what or something like that. Just somebody who has a doctorate and has gone through the research process, etc. You might also want a topic that's very relevant to the team you want to join, so that you can really contribute huge amounts there. And then a few final things maybe is in order to keep track of, or at least keep in touch with what is done in the industry, don't hesitate to do internships. Keep in touch with the problematics that the industry is working on and the tools they're using, these type of things. That can also help you refine your thesis topic a little bit as you go, or maybe come up with a new research question that can help your thesis a little bit. So yeah, those are definitely advice I would give to people who are trying to graduate and get a job.
Yeah, and just a quick follow up to that one. You're working in a pretty hot field, I think it's fair to say, and there's a lot of interest in this field. What direction do you think the field is going? Where do you see it? It just seems, from an external point of view, right? It doesn't seem that drone delivery is coming anytime soon. But obviously, you have a stronger background and have more knowledge about it. But in general, where do you think this field is going? How realistic do you think some of the things that we hear are going to be?
Yeah, no, that's a fair question to have. So we've noticed a few things, like notably, Amazon got approval from the FAA this year, and so I think the link with the regulations is starting to really develop and really trying to push in that direction. I think the FAA is really being proactive on this and try to make it happen. So that definitely helps the industry. We've seen a few actors in the field. I think I believe UPS and Google and a few others are also working on this problematic, although with a different sort of approach, I would say, in terms of the autonomy that they want to have on the drones. Maybe it's more about pre-established routes that we know are pretty clear of obstacles and these type of things. So I think that's one direction that I can see the field taking. And the other one is in terms of certifying what you put on such drones. I think is going to be the big next step, because for now we have people putting, for instance, machine learning models on drones, but the explainability of those models is not especially proven or something that's really understood at 100%. So I think that's going to be the next big thing as well is like, how do you certify all the different machine learning algorithms that you have on board a drone so that you can make a safety case, that you can advocate for policymaking, etc., and make sure that you obey to the FAA regulations and stuff like that. So I think those are two big directions that are going to be the next steps. Yeah.
All right, great. Yeah. John, we really appreciate you being here with us today. And thanks to all the viewers for watching. And if you have any comments and questions for Jean or for us, please email them to PhD expertise team@gmail.com. And stay tuned for our next episode.
Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, Jean and Rajiv.
All right,
Bye.
thank you.